I welcome you all to the module 4 of this course titled Applied Positive Psychology. So, the module 4 is about mindfulness and flow. So, we are discussing these two concepts individually as well as the relationship in this module. So, this is the second lecture of this module and overall this is lecture number 11. So, today we will be talking about the concept of flow. So, psychology of flow, we will be discussing the various dimensions of these concepts. So, before we talk about today's lecture, let me give you a brief recap of the last lecture, that is lecture number 10, which was first lecture of this module. The lecture number 10 was about the concept of mindfulness. We discussed what is the meaning of mindfulness, what are its historical roots, what are the therapeutical effects of mindfulness. We also discussed how mindfulness is very effective in dealing with thoughts and emotions, especially the destructive thoughts and emotions, and how it helps us to regulate emotions. And at the end, we discussed some of the possible practices that we can do in terms of enhancing mindfulness in our life. So, these are some of the things that we discussed in the last lecture. In today's lecture, we will be focusing on the concept of flow. So, we will be discussing what is the meaning of flow, how psychologists look at the concept of flow. We will discuss some of the models of flow and models and the conditions that are necessary for the flow to happen. We will also discuss various dimensions of the flow and activities that are conducive and which are not conducive for flow, and we will be also discussing what are the consequences of flow, psychological consequences, and at the end we will be discussing some of the dangers of the flow. So, these are some of the things that we will be discussing in today's lecture. So, let us start today's lecture. Now, in order to understand the concept of flow, just few questions that I am asking here, which will kind of contextualize this whole concept in our daily life experiences. So, have you ever experienced moments in your life which were so involved and engrossed that you were in that moment, the rest of the world seems to have disappeared, your mind wasn't wandering, you were totally focused and concentrated on that activity to such an extent that you were not even aware of yourself, so you completely forgot yourself. Time seems to disappear, or sometimes time seems to move very fast, hours may seem like minutes. Only when you came out of the experience did you realize how much time had actually passed. I am sure most of us have experienced some moments in our life which are like this, when we are so engrossed in some activity that all these characteristics were present at that moment. Like, the mind was so focused and concentrated that whole world seems to have disappeared. Mind was very focused, and time seems to have disappeared. You also kind of forget yourself and so on. So, these are some of the experiences which depicts the flow experiences. So, if you have experienced such kind of moments in your life, that means in that moment you have experienced this whole concept of flow in your life. So, flow, this whole concept in the field of psychology was popularized, and this whole research in this area was started by this person. His name is Csikszentmihalyi. He was the main person behind this whole concept, and he started this whole concept of flow in terms of research and so on. And his book of Flow, the Psychology of Optimal Experience, still it is available, and it is one of the bestseller in terms of the number of copies that was sold. So, this shows this is a very popular concept, and it has also been applied in the various dimensions of human endeavors and so on. So, let me give you some of the background story, how this concept came into existence. So, this flow state was first discovered by, as I already said, this person. It's difficult to pronounce his name. It is Csikszentmihalyi, who popularized the concept through his bestseller, Flow, the Psychology of Optimal Experiences. So, based on his experiences in the research and so on, he wrote this book, and it became a bestseller, and from that this whole concept became much more popular. So, Csikszentmihalyi in 1975 began his research on flow with a rather simple question on why people are often highly committed to activities without obvious external rewards. He found that such activities share a common aspect, which he labeled flow state or flow experiences. So, he was trying to understand why sometimes people are so engrossed in activities like artists, painters and so on, even if there is no external reward for this. Why people experience such states, so engrossed, so committed, so focused, even when there is no explicit external reward for such activities. So that was his question, and from this question he started doing research, and the outcome was this whole understanding of flow state. So he was very much fascinated with the artist and their unwavering concentration, and wanted to understand the subjective experiences when people are in such state. So he was trying to understand that what happens in their mind when they are in such state, or what are the conditions which leads to such state. So these are some of the things that he was trying to understand through his research. So Csikszentmihalyi began his research on psychological well-being by exploring how people felt during all these enjoyable activities. So through interviews with over 200 individuals engaged in activities like chess, basketball, dance, music composition, rock climbing, he gathered descriptions of moments where everything felt effortless and perfectly aligned. So he interviewed people from diverse areas, particularly mostly creative activities and sports, and people who experience such moments very frequently. He took interviews from them, and he was trying to understand what leads to these kind of experiences and what happens to their mind in terms of when they experience such state. So these individuals, often involved in their pursuit without financial reward or recognition, describe being fully immersed, experiencing intense joy and performing at their best. Many of such individuals may be doing these activities mostly like for their raw hobbies, not because of any explicit financial benefits and so on. Analyzing all these accounts, the interview contents, he identified a distinct state of consciousness characterized by total engagement and intrinsic motivation. He initially called it as Autotelic experience, but later he named it as a flow state. So from this understanding with all these people who experience such state, he then later conceptualized this state as a flow state. Initially he called it as a autotelic experience, and later he called it as a flow state. Now what is this flow state? We have kind of understood what is flow state, but let me give you more technical definition as given by Csikszentmihalyi. So according to Csikszentmihalyi, flow state can be defined as a holistic sensation that people feel when they act with total involvement. So whenever people act or do any actions with total involvement and engrossment, that holistic sense that happens in a mental state, that is called as a flow state. He also defined it's an intense experiential involvement in moment-to-moment activity, which can be either physical or mental. So this flow state can happen in the mental actions or any mental task, or even physical tasks like sports and so on. Here attention is fully invested in the task at hand, and the person functions at his or her fullest capacity. When people are in such engrossed state, they in that state the person's functioning aspect become highest. So they act at that time to the best of their capacity. Another statement about flow was given by Csikszentmihalyi. Again, it is a state of concentration so focused that it amounts to absolute absorptions in an activity. Everyone experiences flow from time to time and will recognize its characteristics. People typically feel strong, alert, in effortless control, unself-conscious, and at the peak of their abilities. Both a sense of time and emotional problem seems to disappear, and there is an exhilarating feeling of transcendence. So in this definition, he is talking about some of the characteristics associated with flow state, like person typically become alert, very effortless control happens, the action automatically flows out of them, the whole sense of focus on self disappears, and you almost merge with the action. People are generally at the peak of their performance and so on. So people also forget their emotional problems and so on. They almost remain in a state of transcendence. So this is another, these are some of the descriptions of flow state, some of the definition given by the founder himself of the concept. Founder in terms of research in this area. Now this state it was a new thing in terms of academic research, but this has always been discussed by athletes and other people. Such experiences were commonly described by people in those cases, where flow state was described using different terms. For example, athlete referred to as a being in the zone. So a lot of athletes, when they perform at their best, generally people call it as that I was in my zone. So they are basically talking about flow state in that moment. Religious mystics also sometimes describe an experience called ecstasy. Artists and musicians call it as an aesthetic rupture. So these are different terms which people in the different domains use, but all these terms are actually indicating the same state which is called as a flow state. So it is a full involvement of flow rather than happiness that makes it for excellence in the life. So in the flow state, this full involvement is what makes functioning of the people at their best. We can be happy experiencing the passive pleasures of rested body, warm sunshine, or the contentment of a serene relationship, but this kind of happiness is dependent on a favorable external circumstances. So what here it is stated is that in flow state there has to be an active involvement from where it flows, the action flows, and the resultant happiness and functioning state happens. Where there are many times when we experience happiness in life which is a very passive state, when all the external conditions are in favorable state or favorable, all are in the right condition, then we experience certain happiness state, but it depends on the external condition. Flow is not like that. You kind of create that state by active involvement and focus. So happiness that follows flow is of our own making. So the happiness that comes out of flow is because of our own involvement. It comes from inside of us. It is not because of some external condition. And it leads to increasing complexity and growth in consciousness. So it has so many positive impact that we'll be discussing in few slides later. Now let us see some models that describe flow state. So there was the original model that Csikszentmihalyi proposed based on his experiences with people who experience flow state frequently. He representing the relationship between perceived challenges and skills, 3 regions of momentary experiences were identified. So what Csikszentmihalyi found out, so he proposed a model for flow. Basically what he is describing in this model is that under what condition flow state happens. So that is what he was trying to map out in the model. So there was an initial model and the slight changes happened later also. So in the initial model, so basically what he said that this flow state depends on 2 important things. One is the perceived challenges. To what extent you feel sense of challenge when you do a task, and your skills. To what extent your skill matches with the task. So these 2 factors are very important in the flow state. So he stated in the original model, he said there are 3 possible conditions that can happen. One is the flow state when challenge and skill are matched. Flow state happens when there is a necessary challenge involved in the task. So task will not be very easy for you. You have to stretch yourself, your skills and limits, but it will not be impossible also for you. So your skill will match the challenge. Although when we say something is challenging, we are saying it is not easy. You have to stretch yourself, but then you can stretch because you have the necessary skills to do that. If you don't have the skills to do that, obviously this will not lead to flow state. You will feel frustrated and so on. So there has to be necessary balance between the sense of challenge and the skill. Only in those conditions of task, flow state is experienced. Other state that can happen based on the challenge and skill is, one is boredom can happen where challenges and opportunities are too easy relative to skills. So when your challenges is very less as compared to your skills, then the people may not find it very exciting to do. So the task is too easy, then the person has higher skill level, then obviously it is not matching. So the person may do it, obviously he or she can do, but then it will not be the flow state, but the person most probably will experience boredom. The another thing that happens called anxiety state, where demands increasingly exceed capacities for action. Anxiety is experienced when the sense of challenge is too high as compared to your skills. So your skill is not matching with the task. The task is too challenging and your skill is not at that level, then one may experience the feeling of anxiety and so on. So this model says these are the possible conditions that can happen. So this was graphically represented in this figure. So this side shows challenges of a task. What is the level of challenge? So as we go up, challenge increases. This side in the horizontal line, it is shown your skills. So as we move from here to here, your skill level increases. So based on this combination of challenges and skills, you can experience either boredom when your skill is very high here and the challenge is very low. So challenge is very low, skill is very high, one will experience boredom. Flow state happens when these challenges and skill level matches. As the challenge increases, skill also increases. Then the flow state will experience. Anxiety is experienced when challenge is too high and the skill is very low. So this is where anxiety is experienced. So this is the the figuratively the it is showing these three possible state one can experience based on the necessary challenge and skill level. So later also this model was little bit another condition was also included, which is sometimes called as 4-channel or quadrant flow model, which says there can be another condition which is called apathy. When the challenges are also low, skills are also low. So this could be a fourth condition that can happen based on the combination of challenge and skill. So these three we have already discussed: boredom, flow, anxiety. Now fourth condition is called apathy. It will happen when the challenge level is also very low and skill level is also very low. The person will not have any interest in it. So the sense of apathy will persist. So this is also called as a quadrant flow model or 4-channel model. So this is a little bit addition of one more factor in the original model. This model was also further made little bit more complex and more conditions were included. This concept of flow was largely still remains unchanged over the past 25 years in terms of model. However, the model of balancing perceived challenge and skill has been refined by Dept and colleagues. They refined it a little bit more, which is also described mostly similar things but with more description, more addition of factors. Through the experience sampling method is basically when you ask people to report their experiences immediately in their day-to-day life experiences, whenever they are experiencing something, whatever based on the research, immediately they have to note it down as they go through the daily life experiences. So some beep machines are given, so it will beep with certain interval of time and you have to report, write your experiences. So this is called experience sampling method. So they found that the quality of momentary experience increases as challenges and skill exceed an individual average level. So in this model what they are saying, they are basically putting the condition of average level of individual of skill. So we all have certain skills level, so there is an average skill level, and they are saying that quality of momentary experience increases as challenge and skill exceeds that average level. So they are using the including another condition called average skill level. So the condition of flow will happen when the person will move beyond the average level of their skills and average level of challenges. For example, playing chess with a highly skilled opponent may foster flow due to increased challenge, while playing with a beginner may not. Simply because the challenge has increased because somebody is a very professional chess player and you have to play with that condition. So obviously there is a more likely chance that you will experience flow as compared to, let's say, somebody is beginner and if you are also pretty good chess player and so on. So this model is shown like this with the concentric circles. So here it is average condition of skills. So this is the point where there is the challenge level is average, skill level is also average. As we move out, all this condition actually increases. So if you move here, sense of relaxation will increase, flow will increase this side, arousal will increase, anxiety will increase, worry will increase this side, apathy will increase this side, boredom will increase this side as we move from center to outside. So this is what this particular diagram is showing the conditions of flow with more number of conditions and possibilities. So for example, here they are showing, let's say this is your average point of experience of skill. This is any task that requires average skill, and there is an average challenge. As the challenge increases here, as it increases little bit here, and skill also increases as you move here, skill also increases, the possibility of flow state is likely to happen. Similarly here, there is also possibility of more control over the task. Here what is happening, your skill challenge is decreasing, but skill little bit increases, so there is a possibility of relaxation here. Boredom can happen when your challenges are decreasing here, and skills are also, even let's say your skill remains same, but challenges are decreasing here. So boredom is likely to happen and so on like this. So apathy will happen here, worry will increase here. So as challenges increases but skill decreases. So these are the various diverse conditions that are shown in this model, which describes the flow model in a much more complex way. So this model is visualized using concentric circle, as we have seen, around the central point, which represents person's average level of skill and challenge. So that center point is the depiction of average level of skill and challenge. Intensity depicted by these concentric rings of each experience. Anxiety, arousal, relaxation increases with distance from a person average level. So as we move from this central point to any side, all this condition actually increases. So here as I have shown, move here, so this will increase, move here, this will increase, and so on. So these are all, as you move from center to any areas, so those conditions, whatever is written here, will increase. So each ring outward from the center represent higher intensities of experience as challenges and skill exceed average levels. The closer an individual is to the center, the less intense the experience. The further out they go, the more intense it becomes. So all these experiences that we have shown here, flow, control, relaxation, boredom, their intensity increases as we move from this center. So apathy is experienced when perceived challenge and skills are below a person average level. So this is where apathy is experienced. So the task requires below average challenge, below average skill also requires, then the person is not mostly experiencing apathy. There is not much interest in it. When they are above, when challenge is also above the average, skills are also above the average requirement, then flow is experienced. So this is more updated model on flow. So this is just reported again here. Flow is experienced when personal skills and challenge are above average and well matched. In addition, interest in the particular activity is also very important. For flow to happen, you have to be interested in the task. Otherwise, flow will not happen. Even if your skill is very high, even though the task may require high challenges, but if you are not interested in the task, then probably flow will not happen. So some researchers suggest that interest in the task should be considered as a precondition for the appearance of the flow. A person, for example, who does not enjoy chess may have a more difficult time gaining a flow state even if their skill level is high enough to the theoretically mean that they should be able to reach in flow. So the necessary interest, internal interest towards the task is also very important to experience flow. Apart from challenge and skills, some research actually suggests. But most of the model shows these two conditions are very important. What is your perception of challenge and what is your skill level? Does it match with that challenge? So that is very important. Apart from that, your interest in the activity is also very important. Now let us see what are the conditions for flow to happen. So one condition this model very clearly shows. These two conditions are very important. That when we encounter a challenging task that tests our skills, that means it matches with our skill, but it has to be extended. That is a task which is high on challenge and the skill level, stretching us almost to the limit. We may experience anxiety if challenge exceeds our skills. If challenge is too high, then we'll experience anxiety, and experience boredom if skill exceeds challenges. If we are highly skilled and challenge is very low, then in that case we experience boredom. Neither of these two cases can result to the experience of the flow. Flow, the conditions are stated very clearly. Now, there seems to be three common elements in flow definitions and experiences. So if you look at all the experiences of the flow in our life or in the description, research description, so these three elements are commonly reported by people. One is that people experience a sense of deep involvement and concentration. So whenever flow happens, this condition is present. The deep involvement and concentration. Second, feeling of ultimate enjoyment while doing the task. So this sense of enjoyment is very important. Flow happens when you are enjoying the process of doing the task. It will never happen when you don't enjoy the task. So there has to be an internal interest too in terms of doing that task. So feeling of ultimate joy while doing the task. Third condition is intrinsic interest in the task, which is connected to the joy actually. So doing the task for its own sake and not because of external pressure or demand. So when we do tasks because we want to do it, or there is an internal motivation in doing the task. You are not doing the task simply because somebody is saying it or there is a pressure from the outside world. Then the flow is less likely to happen. Flow is more likely to happen when you yourself, initiate the task. You yourself is motivated to do the task. So there is a sense of internal interest. So these three conditions are very important in all the flow definitions and all the flow experiences that people report. There is a deep sense of involvement and concentration. People also enjoy doing the task, and there is an internal interest in doing the task. Now let us talk about what are the dimensions of flow or what are the characteristics of the flow experiences. So whenever we experience flow state, what happens in our mind? What are the characteristics and dimensions of those experiences? So Csikszentmihalyi, from his research, he conceptualized flow construct in terms of 9 dimensions. He says in the flow experiences, there are 9 dimensions. The first one is that we have already discussed is challenge and skill aspect, which is challenge and skill balance. So the necessary balance has to be there between the task and your skill. So it's the operational starting point for flow where challenges and skills in a situations are balanced. Your ability to do the task and the necessary challenge has to match. Then flow will happen. So this is the first dimensions of flow or characteristics of the flow to happen. Second is there is a merging of action and awareness. So there is a sense of your sense of awareness and the action almost they become one. So action and awareness merging refers to a profound sense of unity between the person and the activity. So almost you get identified with the tasks. You are no longer present as a separate individual. You almost merge with the task. So that is another aspect of the flow experience. So they are performed. When individuals experience this dimension, they often describe feeling completely immersed as if they are one with the task at hand. As if they are one with the task at hand. This merging of action and awareness is frequently associated with the experiences of flow and is commonly described as bringing a sense of peace and harmony to the activity, active engagement. So that is also happens, almost an identification with the task. Because when you get so involved and engrossed in any task, almost that there the identification of the task happens. You are no longer a separate individual, you almost become the task. So that is another thing that happens in the flow state or that is a dimension of flow. The third is there is a sense of clear goal and clarity of purpose when flow experiences happens. So it refers to having a well-defined objective that keeps a person focused and engaged in the moment. This clarity allows individuals to stay connected to the task and respond effectively to important cues. Alongside clear goals, individuals also process their performance continuously, evaluating their progress in relation to these objectives. So there has to be a clear goal and purpose. The more clarity you have, the more likely you are likely to experience flow state. Because if you yourself is confused what to do and what am I doing, then obviously your engrossment will not be of that level for flow to happen. So there has to be well-defined objective and that keeps the person focused and engrossed in the task. So for flow to happen, there has to be clear goals, clarity in the purpose of doing the task is also very important dimension. The third is unambiguous feedback, that very clear feedback you get how you are doing the task. So in a flow state means receiving information that is straightforward and easy to understand. This type of feedback allows individual effortlessly process and adjust their actions. So if you get very clear feedback, how are you doing, are you progressing and so on, either from other people or your internal feedback you get, how are you going in the path. If you yourself don't know, then obviously that sense of focus will not be there. So if you're doing a task and then you get very clear feedback, straightforward feedback, how to go ahead and what kind of level of performance you are having, then this all helps you to adjust your action accordingly so that you achieve your result and so on. So whether you remain on the right track and maintain the optimal performance. So feedback also plays very important role. Feedback has to be unambiguous, clear, straightforward and so on. If you get feedback, then it is more likely to create a flow state. Fourth is concentration on the task at hand. Obviously, by definition, flow means you are highly concentrated. So if you are not concentrated, you are not able to concentrate, flow will not happen. So it is the hallmark of being in a flow state where one's attention is fully absorbed in the present activity. This intense focus creates a deep connection with the task, embodying the essence of the flow state. Maintaining this present center focus is crucial as flow arises from being fully immersed in the moment, setting the stage for next dimension of flow. So focus is very important, and generally focus will happen if you are interested in the task. We struggle to focus when we are not interested in a task. So if you are interested in a task, if you are internally interested, focus naturally or spontaneously comes about. So that is also another aspect to that is why for flow to happen, interest in the task is also very important. So concentration is something very important. Present moment concentration, which we discussed in the last lecture in terms of mindfulness. So that can also facilitate this flow state, because that is why these two concepts are discussed together in one module. In the next lecture, we will be looking at the connection between these two concepts. The sixth dimension of flow state is the sense of control over one's action. Whenever we experience flow state, there is a sense of control over one's action. So that means it is a vital aspect of flow arising from deep connection with the task at hand. This sense of control gives you a confidence, empowering individuals to feel capable and command. If you are in a sense of control, obviously it gives you more confidence that you can change the direction according to your will and to bring about the result. If you feel I am not in control, then you cannot change the direction, you cannot make changes to bring about changes in the result and so on, then the involvement will not happen. So if you have a little bit of more freedom in terms of controlling the task, you are more likely to experience flow state. So this feeling also removes the fear of failure, which often hampers performance, allowing the person to fully embrace and engage with the challenge presented in the activity. If you have control over the task, whenever you are doing the task, then obviously your sense of involvement will be more, because then you are also responsible for whatever is happening. So that is also very important. The 7 is loss of self-consciousness. This is also one of the common things that people experience when in the flow state, is basically it's marked by freedom from concern about others' opinion or judgment. Many times when we become too self-conscious, what other people will tell about my performance, about my whatever it is, then we cannot get deeply into the task simply because we are too much concerned how other people are judging you and so on. Then the kind of depth for flow to happen will not happen in those situations. So what happens when people are in the flow state, they completely lose that sense of separate self. They get totally engaged in the task, and that is very important requirement. So in everyday life, people often operate under a sense of being evaluated, which can interfere with the deep focus. However, flow involves complete immersion in the task, allowing individuals to shed this self-awareness and experience a liberating, undistracted engagement with the activity. So you almost lose a sense of self, which was too much concerned about the other's evaluation. It kind of vanishes when you are in a flow state. So then you are not distracted. So that is what is also reported by people. The 8th dimension of flow state is time transformation, which basically means your sense of time changes. So in a flow state refers to a shift of how time is perceived. For some, time seems to stop. For others, it may slow down or speed up unexpectedly. This altered sense of time stems from the intense focus and deep involvement characteristics of the flow state. Because attention is so fully absorbed in the activity, individuals often lose track of time, only realizing passage of the time after the experience ends. So while they are in that task, they get so involved in the task that they simply lose the track of time. So many times when we are too engaged in a task, we forget about how much time has passed. So sometimes this whole day passes and you may feel like only few hours have passed. This kind of experiences we all had when we were too engaged in a task, and we are with people whom we love, and we kind of enjoy a particular task or somebody's company, and then the time moves very fast. The physical time is moving in its own pace. Psychologically, we experience it like that because of our attention is engrossed with somewhere else. So this whole experience of time transformation is a common thing. More commonly, people experience time runs very fast when they are in a state of flow state. The last one is called autotelic experience. It's the final dimension of flow, which represents the deeply rewarding nature of the state itself. It captures the idea that flow activities are pursued for the sheer joy of doing them, independent of external reward. Csikszentmihalyi coined the term from Greek roots. Auto means self, teleos means goal, self goal. It comes from within yourself, to emphasize that these activities are done for their own sake, making experience intrinsically fulfilling. So typically flow state happens when you do tasks which are intrinsically motivated. You do it simply, there is a sheer joy of doing them. Whether you get external reward or not, that is not an important criteria for doing those tasks, but typically you do it because you enjoy doing those tasks. So those are called autotelic experiences. This is also flow state. This is also a very important requirement. When you intrinsically interested in the task, flow is most likely to happen as compared to when you are extrinsically motivated. So these are like 9 dimensions or characteristics of flow. These are things reported by people when they experience flow state. Now let us look at the concept of how to assess flow. In terms of research, people want to measure it. So how it is measured in the research? Let us see some of the ways to measure flow state among the people. So interest in studying flow has led various empirical approaches, because people started getting interested in this concept. So then you have to do research. How to do research? The first thing in research, you have to assess it, measure it. Enhancing accessibility for researchers and practitioners. Flow being a subjective experience, it's a very subjective experience. How do you measure it? Pose a measurement challenge. As Csikszentmihalyi noted that any measurement only partially reflects the experience, because it's a very subjective state. You experience something very subjective when you get engrossed in the task. So it is not easy to measure such states. Whatever you do, it will be like partial reflection of that, which is still good because at least we are getting some picture. So researchers advocate using both qualitative and quantitative methods to capture flow's complexity. A lot of research do qualitative research where the people interview and ask them what has happened, what kind of experience they have, and then they find out themes out of those experiences. Quantitative method uses standardized questionnaires tools. They will ask specific questions and one has to rate whether such experiences happens on a rating scale, and they can measure it quantitatively using numbers and so on. So this early flow research by Csikszentmihalyi and Jackson studies on athletes used qualitative methods to identify flow factors, aligning closely with Csikszentmihalyi's 9 dimension of models. So all this 9 dimension that we discussed actually came from a lot of this early qualitative research where they interviewed people who experienced flow state and then they created theme out of them. Quantitative experience basically uses standardized questionnaires such as flow state scale, second version, and dispositional flow scale 2 provides reliable flow assessment across dispositional and situational contexts. So these scales can measure whether you are more likely to experience flow state because of certain personal characteristics, or in situational context, do you experience flow state or not. So these scales can measure that. So these scales validated through factor analysis assesses frequency and intensity of flow experiences. So to what extent people experience those things, frequency, and to what is the intensity of such experiences, these questionnaires can measure and give you a score for each person. Technological advances now support understanding flow at the neurophysiological level also. People also starting to look at what happens in the brain when people go into the flow state. Although the research is in its early state, some early neurological studies by Hamilton and recent research by Dietrich 2004 and some other like D. Manzano and colleagues suggested that during flow, regions like frontal lobe of the brain are deactivated, enabling automatic non-conscious process. So frontal lobe of the brain is that frontal part of the brain. This is responsible for conscious thought processes and so on. They found this part actually gets deactivated. So in flow state, automatically things flow in a very automatic non-conscious processes. So that is some of the findings related to neurological studies. Psychophysiological markers such as heart rate, muscle activity have also been linked to flow. As technology progresses, these insights into flow, physiological undermining are expected to deepen. So these are like some of the initial research. We still don't have much neurological and physiological understanding. With the passage of time, probably we'll have more deeper understanding about them. So this is how researchers tries to assess flow state and make conclusions. Now let us look at what are the activities that are conducive and non-conducive for flow state to happen. Which activities are more likely to give flow state and which activities are not conducive for flow to happen. Let's see some of these things from the research. So activities that can facilitate flow experiences are called autotelic activities because by definition it means these are the activities which are more likely to lead to flow state to happen because they are mostly intrinsically motivated and enjoyable and have an end in themselves. So mostly intrinsically motivated task has the potential for flow state to happen. Many activities can be conducive for flow experiences as long as the activity is able to activate high challenge and high skill situation. So any activity can lead to flow experience provided this activity provides the right condition for high challenge and high skill condition. So it has to be challenging task, but at the same time it has to match your challenge. You have to extend your challenge a bit. It will not be easy for you people, but you have the skills to match that challenge. So if that condition is met, any task can create flow state. So that is the main thing. And obviously your interest in the task will add to that flow state. Activities such as sports, dancing, creative arts and other hobbies, socializing, even studying, reading, very often working can also create a flow state. Sports, dancing, mostly creative activities, even workplaces, working, studying, reading, everything can lead to flow state provided this right condition of challenge and skill is matched. And there is an involvement required in these tasks. Activities which are less likely to be experienced, less likely to cause flow state include mostly housework, idling, resting, watching TV and so on. So because if you look at these activities, here there is no active involvement much. You are doing it very mechanically. Watching TV for example, you are just watching, there is no involvement from your side. Something is going on the screen and you are just watching it. Then flow is not, you may feel happy, but flow will not happen in this state because for flow to happen, you have to actively get involved in the task. So watching TV or like idling and resting, which may emotionally be good for people, but it will not create flow state because you are not involved in anything. You are just passively looking at something. So in such activities will not create flow state. Now let us look at some of the empirical research that were done where the people have reported flow state in sports and performance domains where there is a requirement of performance required. Csikszentmihalyi 1975 book Beyond Boredom and Anxiety introduced the flow concept and research in flows of sports began to emerge in 1980s. So after that book publication, a lot of people have started doing research, particularly in the field of sports, how sportsmen experience flow state because sports gives you a very good fertile ground for flow to experience because mostly people are, when they get into sports, they are highly interested in those sports. People are interested and there is a necessary skill also required in every sports. Challenge emerges in every sports. So sports gives you very fertile ground for experience of the flow to happen. Flow is particularly relevant in sports as elite athletes frequently experience optimal performance state because sports naturally encourage focus on improvement and present athletes with structured challenges and skill building opportunities, making an ideal setting for flow research. Sports gives very ideal setting because it has all the ingredients for flow to happen. Sports often provide intrinsic reward because people are generally interested in sports. Those who are not doing into the sports because they are interested in that task, offering a deeply enjoyable experience done for its own sake. Characteristics of an autotelic activity that aligns well with the flow state. So, basically, what they are saying, sports research for flow state in the sports was very prominent, primarily because it was a very good situation where flow can happen. So, some research shows that factors that influence flow in athletes identified by qualitative research includes things like to what extent people are motivated, their physical preparation, their confidence, their focus, their mastery orientation, to what extent they feel control of the task or the sports. All these were contributing to the flow state. Research has also shown that athletes motivated by intrinsic reasons experience flow more easily, especially the athletes who are more intrinsically interested in the sports, they are more likely to experience flow state. For instance, Kowal and Fortier found that self-determined motivation was positively related to flow in swimmers. So, swimmers who are more interested in the task more than the external reward, they were more experiencing flow state. Studies of older athletes participating in the World Master Games revealed that intrinsic motivation, perceived competence, and low anxiety were key predictors of flow. So, here also intrinsic interest was coming very predominantly in this research also. So, these findings reinforce the concept of autotelic personality, where people engage in activities for own sake, enjoyment, the inherent rewards for providing. So that is apart from challenge and skill, intrinsic interest was something that research consistently found, particularly in sports and performances situations. So in other performance contexts apart from sports, flow was also studied, like music performance also received significant higher rating from examiners. Those who experienced flow in their music, they were rated higher by the judges. Creative writers and their flow experiences, offering insight into how facilitate flow and while writing. So creative writing also provides a very strong ground for flow to happen, and a lot of research shows that. Research has also shown computer mediated environments such as web design, online learning also has a very good potential for flow to experience. Research shows that compelling online experiences rely on facilitating flow, and the flow experienced by web user was similar to flow in other settings. So flow was reported in all these conditions. Impact of mindfulness in facilitating flow among dancers were also reported, where dancers who practice mindfulness, they reported more flow state. So in the next lecture, we'll be talking about this connection between mindfulness and flow in more detail. So we'll just briefly talk about some of the consequences of the flow state. So if you experience flow state, what will happen in terms of how will it impact you psychologically? So research shows flow state improves subjective well-being, happiness, life satisfaction, positive emotions, and so on. Flow has been reported to be connected with all these indicators of well-being. Flow is found to be correlated with increased performance, higher motivation and engagement, and positive mood in organizational context. Flow is most predominantly correlated with performance. People who experience flow, they are good performers. They perform at their best. They also report higher motivation, engagement with the task, and positive mood. All these were found even in organizational context while people work in organization and so on. Few research also indicated that developing enriching and challenging working environment. So working environment, if it is very challenging and enriching also, it is more conducive for flow, may enhance employee productivity, boosting organizational productivity level and so on. So if the organization provide right environment for necessary challenge and enriching an environment, then the employees are more likely to experience flow state and it will enhance productivity and so on. Why flow leads to better performance? Why it is always has been very strongly linked to performance? Because some research shows that flow is always correlated to better performance primarily for two main reasons. One is it is highly functional state. So whenever you are in a state of flow, you are at your best functional state because you are highly focused and engaged with the task. So it promotes performance. By definition, the state is highly functional. Second, a person experiencing flow are more motivated to perform further tasks to keep on experiencing flow, and so this flow state itself is rewarding. And the person will try to get into this state more and more. Since this is a functional state, the more they get into the state, the better performance they will have and productivity they will experience. So because of this reason, flow has always been linked to better performance. There could be many other reasons where flow can facilitate positive mood, which may further promote creativity, positive thinking, encourage helping behavior among employees. All these are linked to productivity. Experiencing flow encourages a person to persist and return to the activity, persist and return again and again, and because of the experiential reward, thereby fosters growth and skills. Flow was also associated with commitment and achievement during the high school years. Even in a school setting also, flow has been linked to higher achievement and commitment. Some of the longitudinal research also suggests that mastering challenges in daily life, means more flow experiences, may protect against negative outcomes. So if you experience more flow state in your daily life, the negative things are less likely to happen. You may not get into negative things, the chances are very less. For example, flow experience was associated with diminished delinquency after 2 years of high adversity at home school in sample of American adolescents. So adolescents who are experiencing more flow state, they, even after some adversities and problems in their life, they're less likely to go into delinquency or crime activities or negative things in their life. So flow was protecting them, flow experiences. A little bit we'll be talking about some of the individual differences in flow, which is called autotelic personality. People also differ. Not all people are equally likely to experience flow. So there can be some individual personality differences also. So there can be large individual differences in the frequency and intensity of flow experiences, which may link to be both personality and situational variable. Csikszentmihalyi hypothesized that some people have an increased likelihood of experiencing this state called autotelic personality. So he used a term called autotelic personality for those people who are more likely to experience flow state as compared to other people, because they have a certain tendency or certain characteristics within themselves which makes them more likely to experience flow as compared to other people. So there can be individual differences. Not everybody will experience flow state in equal amount. So he suggested that autotelic personality, as exhibited by a person who enjoys life and generally does things for their own sake rather than in order to achieve some later external reward. So autotelic people are more likely to do things which they like more as compared to just doing things for external pressures and rewards and so on. So that is one thing that leads them more likely to experience flow state. Autotelic individuals also have a internal characteristics of intrinsically motivated in high challenge, high skill situation. Now some people, especially these autotelic people, they feel very excited when there is a challenge and high skill situation. So they are more drawn towards such kind of task where there is a challenge and there is a high skill requirement. Because of their personal characteristics, they are more likely to get drawn to those situations, and because of that they are more likely to experience flow state. So they are least happy and motivated in apathy situations. They avoid situations which are low challenge and low skill situations. Non-autotelics, people who are not in that category, those least motivated in high challenge, high skill situation, on the other hand, did not find apathy condition aversive. So people who are not autotelics, who are less likely to experience flow, they may not be so excited in high challenge, high skill situation. They may avoid such situation. So therefore they are less likely to experience them. So because of their internal characteristics of getting drawn to high challenge, high skill situation, these people are more likely to experience flow state. Rathunde also demonstrated that autotelic personality is fostered in what is called as a complex family environment, one that simultaneously provides support and challenge. So this kind of personalities are developed because what kind of conditions one receives from the family and so on also contributes. Like if you have a more complex environment where you get challenges and also support from people, then you are more likely to become autotelic individuals and so on. So for promoting flow, we'll be talking about the promotion of flow more in detail in the next lecture, but the typical understanding from whatever we have discussed is that, for promoting flow, one thing is that important is that identify activities that lead you to experience flow. So one can identify what activities that gives you more flow state, So everybody have different experiences, different activities that can give them flow state. And so that is identifying is very important and try to do them. In order to find flow in your existing activities, whatever activities you are doing, make them more challenging if they are easy and enhance your skill if they are too difficult. So that is also another thing that one can do to experience more flow state. For whatever you are doing in one's daily life experiences, if possible, one can make them more challenging if the tasks are very easy, or you enhance your skill if the tasks are too difficult. So in both the cases, there will be some kind of matching with the task and skill, which may lead to more flow states in one's life. At the end, we will be discussing what are the possible dangers of flow. Now, flow state, we have discussed all the positive things about flow state and so on. Can there be dangers to flow or some negative aspects to flow also? Research shows that flow experience can happen for both morally good as well as bad activities. It can happen to activities such as gambling or games such as bridge and poker games and so on. Now, flow for any kind of activities, flow can happen. It is not necessary only the good activities one will get into the flow state. Flow can happen in negative activities also, like gambling and other things. People can get highly into flow state. But so that is where activities which are not morally good can also lead to flow state. So that is one of the dangers of flow. So some flow activities can become addictive, such as mountain climbing. Addiction to flow can lead to losing a larger perspective of life. So some people can get addicted to certain activities and because they experience flow too much in those activities. For example, some people get addicted to mountain climbing and so on, which is okay, but the problem is when people get addicted to such activities, they lose the larger perspective of life. They become too one-dimensional and then they don't focus on other aspects of life. So that is also another problem can happen because of the flow state. So in that context, Csikszentmihalyi very clearly said that enjoyable activities that produce flow have a potentially negative effect can happen, while they are capable of improving the quality of existence by creating order in the mind. They can become addictive, at which point the self becomes captive of the certain kind of order, which is then unwilling to cope with the ambiguous life situation. So that is the possible dangers of flow, something that can happen. So therefore, it is important to remember the issue regarding flow is not only how we can make it happen, but also how we can manage it. That is very important. Using it to enhance life, yet being able to let go when necessary. So the management of flow state is also very important, and what kind of activities leading to flow one has to kind of understand and manage it when it is not good for one's life and so on. So according to Csikszentmihalyi, flow is a source of mental energy that focuses attention and motivates action, and like other forms of energy, it can be used for constructive or destructive purpose. So flow is an energy state. You are highly energetic and focused state. It can go in the destructive also and constructive also. So therefore one has to choose what one is doing. Therefore he suggested that it is not enough to strive for enjoyable goals only. One must also choose goals that will reduce this sum total of entropy in the world. So choosing goals and activities is very important, because flow can happen to negative activities also. So it is important whether to enhance the quality of life, one has to choose the actions and activities properly, because otherwise it can undermine all the positive impact of flow. So these are some of the things about flow. In the next lecture, we will be talking about how flow and mindfulness are connected to each other, which is the focus of this module. And we'll be talking more about interventions of flow in terms of practically applying them, little bit more in the next lecture. And then we'll be talking about mindfulness and so on. So with this, I stop here. Thank you.